name is Steph Hogan and I'm with Water Policy. So today's speaker is particularly close to my heart, this topic. So I'm really keen and interested to listen to an expert in this field. So please make Dr. Eva Abal welcome today. So a little bit about Eva. She's the Chief Executive Officer at the International RiverFoundation. So that's a not-for-profit organisation that champions integrated river basin management for the restoration, protection and resilience of the world's rivers. Her career spans 30 years across some pretty impressive positions. She's involved in the Healthy Waterways Partnership. That's a whole of government initiative involving industry and community as well. On that list is also Chief Scientific Officer for the Great Barrier Reef Foundation and involvement as Sustainable Water Program Director for UQ Global Change Institute. Eva's been recognised for her contribution to this field as the inaugural recipient of the Queensland Filipino Women Achievers Award, which was given by the Philippine Ambassador to Australia. That's a high accolade, so well done. Two of Eva's most passionate campaigns include A Voice for Our Rivers and Waterways and Rivers for Future Generations. She's deeply passionate and committed in terms of communicating science to managers, and she's been invited by the Asian Development Bank to be one of the authors of the Asian Water Development Outlook 2011 and 2016. And this is all about water security pathways for Asia and Pacific. So please join me in welcoming Eva.
I would like to acknowledge two members of my team here, Carla Littlejohn, who's our manager for our portfolio partnerships, and Sylvia, who's our comms. And it's an honor to introduce them because we are in the International RiverFoundation. I was talking to Wade and Cheryl. We have a staff time of 4.2 FTE. That's all we have. So we're multitasking. We project manage. We also make very good cocktails. So you have to do that, right? I usually start with asking around. Hands up for those of you who are living close to a river, or have a relationship with the river, or studying the river. I love that. Because what I usually start in the close, I think I go back to maybe about 10 years ago when I went to attend the International Yellow River Forum in Zhengzhou. And they did an impromptu request for me to actually give the closing. And it's tricky when you go to countries where English is not the main language because you have to make your message simple. Otherwise, it gets lost in translation. So my first sentence was, "Rivers are universal," which is very simple, right? And that's why we need to collaborate. And that was my concluding statement. Easy, and they loved it. It was very simple. So message is simple. So what I have the pleasure, and thank you to the team, especially Cheryl, and thank you for the nice introduction as well. I would like to share with you an aspect of what the International RiverFoundation does. And this is really around the resilience of our world rivers. And really, we are releasing the blueprint, the International Resilient Rivers Blueprint, this river symposium on the first day, on the opening. And Carla here is the project manager for that. I thought I'd ask her just in case I dump her in to do more work, and she doesn't hear about it. At least she'll hear it firsthand.
I better listen then. Right?
Thanks, Carla. So the vision for us is, the vision for us, as Steph has indicated, is really about rivers for future generations. So it's about giving the voice to our rivers, but also looking at rivers for future generations. So the first bit of my talk, I'll talk about the paradigm shift, which really we start talking about river recovery, and we always talk about river recovery, river restoration. We need to add in the resilience of our rivers because we need to look at rivers for future generations. The second one is about recognizing that resilience is not just about the ecological component of the river, It includes the economic and definitely includes the social. More importantly, includes the social component. And we talk about, and in Asia Pacific and around the world, the integrated water resources management, integrated river basin management, these are very common words. In the last 2 decades, and I'll show you an engram later on, you will find that these words and practices have actually ramped up so much. Because in the last 2 decades, we have realized that our rivers are really deteriorating very fast. And the last one is an appeal. Come and join our journey. I would love to think, Steph, that we are experts, but this is a journey for all of us. And we'd like to invite you to join our journey. As Steph has indicated, I was involved in the publication of the second Asian Water Development Outlook, and then the third Asian Water Development Outlook, which basically looks at an index for gauging water security in the Asia Pacific countries. I looked after one of the key dimensions, which is key dimension 4, which talks about rivers. And basically what we found in this Outlook document was 80% of rivers in Asia Pacific region are in poor condition. Of course, we have Australia and New Zealand, usually we are up here, we are in the blue. But most of that is really degraded. So only 20% of the rivers in the Asia Pacific region are in good to excellent condition. 3-4 years later, the next Outlook document was released. It was still the same. It was still 80% are still in poor condition. Some rivers improved, some rivers deteriorated, but we kept it to 80%. Now, we look at it on the bright side. On the bright side, that means despite increasing population, despite increasing development, despite climate change, our rivers managed to hold on. However, the message there, it's not good enough. Because climate change is hitting us so fast, and the rivers are just holding on. We have to actually do things faster, is the key message. Similarly in Australia, and this was actually a lift out of the National Land and Water Resources audit that I was also had the privilege to be involved in. And basically it acknowledges that when you look at maps of Australia, this is a very common sight. Australia is basically a dry continent. So we only use very little part of Australia for agriculture and other uses. That means we have very low and variable flows. So I went to a river rally in the US, and they talked about all their wild rivers, all their pristine rivers. Those are very different to the rivers we have here. Our rivers are mainly episodic. So during high rainfall event, they come out, and then we have a long period of drought. And some rivers out in the west are actually dry rivers. We don't see them, so they're seasonal rivers. That's the type of rivers that we have, and the nature, because of the nature of our continent. So the management of rivers like this become more challenging in light of climate change. Plus, added with intensive land use, change in land use, agriculture, urbanization, basically the next challenge then is higher than natural levels of sediment and nutrients coming into our waterways. Very a challenge now in the reef catchments, as we've observed. So this is quite natural for the type of river systems that we have. And of course, the condition of our rivers, when you go back to the community feels that they've declined below a level that the community finds satisfactory. So that there is still that part of the community that loves living on rivers, that think living on the rivers is related to their culture and of course to the economic nature of the rivers. So the challenges we have is not unique to us. We have floods, increased floods and drought. We have then a challenge in terms of our water security, which impacts on our food security, because of course our agriculture areas need the water. But more importantly, it's our ecological crisis. So most of the time when we do integrated water resource management, we stop here. We say, okay, no water security, also no food security. We forget that there's an ecosystem out there that is also very much dependent on the flow of our rivers. And so where are we now in terms of the ecology of our river? I know ecological crisis can be very strong, but that's also always because we stop short and stop in food security and not think about the ecological component of our rivers. So as I said, this is not just in Australia, it's happening around the world, especially around our neighbors in the Asia Pacific region. But I always say this, I love this quote. The activists, and if you were in the World Water Congress, Brisbane Convention Centre, I also use this. The activist is not the man who says the river is dirty. The activist is the man who cleans up the river. So that is the message here now. We have amazing monitoring tools. We know our rivers are deteriorating. The AWDO that was published around Asia Pacific showed that the rivers are deteriorating. What do we do now in terms of our rivers? I would like to, I think we are doing a fantastic job here in Queensland when we look at managing our rivers. We could do more, but at the moment we are doing the best we can. So this is a lift out of the latest August 2019 Great Barrier Reef report card. And what we have acknowledged is the connection between land, catchment, and the water quality in our rivers and the reef. So we know that any disturbance on land and catchment will definitely affect the reef. Of course, it's the receiving asset that we have here in Australia. We also have recognized and openly and transparently started providing indices, health indices, which are easy for the public to understand. So, you know, E, D, of course, it doesn't look as exciting as, of course, a B here in terms of wetland extent. There are a number of challenges, and we've also learned to put targets. So we are doing a fantastic job in relation to how we would like our rivers to be managed, and the recognition of the close connection and the connectivity between land and rivers. However, when we look at our role, and I know I didn't put a slide here on the Sustainable Development Goals, and when we look at SDGs, especially SDG 6, which is the Sustainable Development Goal for water, it talks about Australia and beyond. So we need to be able to transfer our knowledge and our expertise to especially our neighbors in the Asia Pacific region. We need to campaign for a paradigm shift in the way we look at our rivers. And this is very common in Asia. Originally, we looked at waterways as sources of water. Where there's a river, where there is a lake, people would like to build their dwellings, right? Then we transitioned to then, you know, dilution is the solution to pollution. We actually started putting pipes out into our waterways. Our sewage treatment plants still do discharge into our waterways. We treated waterways as sewers. So these are very common sites in Asia, such as countries like India. In the last decade, there was a transition for waterways as a lifestyle, and it was led in Asia Pacific, apart from, of course, Australia and New Zealand, it was led predominantly by Singapore and Malaysia. So for those of you who have been to Singapore, you will see that they have actually embraced their waterways, and they really put waterways as their lifestyle. Korea is the same. So waterways as a lifestyle. And that actually, for us, that's when Healthy Waterways came up as well, because the community out there are seeing waterways as part of their lifestyle. But it's not good enough to do that. We need to plan for waterways for future generations, not just for us now, but for our future generations. We need to focus on the fact that our rivers are not just for servicing us, that we really need to have an outcome-based approach for rivers. That means we look at the ecology, we look at the value of the rivers in general to the community and to the economy. We need to talk about recovery still, then we transition to talk about sustainability. We need to add in the word resilience, because resilience is the planning for a future. It's not just the planning for now. And I know one of the comments I had, and I usually like sharing this when I presented this to Asian Development back 2 weeks ago or last month, they said, Eva, are you just changing the word? And I say, it might be a changing word, but then it's a relevant word for what our vision is. So what are resilient rivers? So resilience is the capacity of a river system to tolerate disturbance without collapsing, to withstand these shocks, to rebuild itself where necessary, and to improve itself where possible. And that basically is an adaptation process. And that ideally, these blue and green lines would be the ideal responses that we would like our rivers to be. That means we build resilience. It's probably the best analogy I could give is a human body. So you build resilience within yourself so that if, you know, an epidemic comes or a certain disease comes around, you are immune to it because you actually built your resilience within. We need to build the resilience of the rivers now. So when you look at projects that the Department of, or the Office of the Great Barrier Reef is doing now in terms of their MIPS, their integrated projects up north in the Burdekin, that's a good example of how you actually increase the resilience of our rivers. Why resilient rivers? These are just some lift outs of other areas. Of course, we have the Resilient Rivers Initiative here, led by the Council of Mayors, basically looking at for the robust future of our waterways. In Minneapolis riverfront, they're actually talking about a new lifestyle of the resilient river. So they're looking at the river now, so in the same way we're looking at Brisbane and really looking at it more from a resilience perspective. A new relationship between the people and the river, which can inform the way of living within nature across the city and the region. We acknowledge that when we talk about resilient rivers, it's not just the river. It's also about the ecological. It's also about the social resilience and the economic resilience. We want inspired communities. We want communities to adapt or to improve or to build the resilience of their waterways. But we also recognize that our rivers have a lot of economies dependent on them. So it's not about putting away or pushing the economies outside of the river. It's actually embedding them and managing them in the way we're managing the ecological component. So, be part of the journey. The international partnership, the International Resilient Rivers Blueprint is an international partnership for the resilience of our rivers. And we have the vision, and by the way, this is draft, and Carla will take notes if in case you have any comments, because we're still to launch, to enable the resilience of our rivers by addressing the complex. So the recognition, there's important words here. The word resilience is there. The word that we recognize, it's complex. So, and it's a combination of social, economic, and ecological. But we actually acknowledge that it's associated with global change. So that's probably the key word, global change, the complexity, and the resilience. The process is, of course, through partnerships, leadership, and collaboration, which I'll touch more on about because that's basically the programs or the pillars of the International River Foundation. The principles behind it, a whole of system approach, recognizing connectivities and interdependencies. It's very hard to address the resilience of a river if you're looking at, like, for an infrastructure that is, if you're just looking at one particular infrastructure. So when you're looking at a particular dam, for example, that's being constructed in the river, to look at resilience of the river, you actually have to understand how the whole river is responding to that infrastructure change or any other change. Effective institutional arrangements. We feel that there's a gap at the moment in terms of how river basins are being managed, in terms of having leaders actually campaign for this. And this is a result of the way the political situation is. 4 to 5 years of political time frame, and by that time the next leader will probably have another priority. So, but we know that management of our rivers actually take a while, decades, right? It took us probably shorter to ruin it, but it will take us decades to actually fix it. It does not fit into a political time frame, unfortunately. So we need champions and leaders that could go through this political time frame. I revert back to Healthy Land and Water now. It used to be Healthy Waterways. How old is the organization? It's probably over 25 years now. When you look at that organization, it managed to go through several elections, several change in government, in fact. The vision is still there because the vision is solid. It's about healthy waterways and, of course, healthy land. I've put in here recognition, knowledge exchange, and celebration. We are always very quick to judge ourselves and say, okay, well, we haven't done a good job. But we always do not have the time to actually recognize that we have done a good job. And we need to celebrate, and we need to recognize that. And hence why we are so excited to actually have the International River Symposium, because that's an opportunity for people to not only to exchange information, but to celebrate the work that they have done well in terms of the rivers and catchments back in their own countries. But also this year, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the International River Prize. Brisbane is the home of the International River Prize, and we all should be very proud of that, because it's probably the highest and the biggest environmental award that is provided in the world. So it's a prestigious award for our rivers and the environment. Innovative financial mechanisms. Gone are the days where we just have a granting scheme. Okay, it's the government's fault. Fine, put in a proposal for the government, come on board and fund this restoration project. That's very traditional. The words like PPP, public-private partnership, is coming, but even more than that is the concept of blended finance. Do we look at social impact investment? Do we look at other types of market-based instruments that can be used to restore our rivers? Because restoring rivers is not cheap, and restoring rivers to resilience definitely is not cheap. So we need a very innovative way of how we approach finance. Cross-sectoral solutions, ecosystem-based adaptation, nature-based solutions, the concept of water, energy, food nexus, and I have a slide that actually will show that. In the long run, we need to really be cognizant about our solutions. We need to look at low-carbon solutions. The big baseline foundation for all of these is about tools, metrics, and targets. Whether it is around the financial mechanisms, whether it's around our impact investors, whether it's around how our rivers respond to the management intervention, we need to have very transparent metrics. We need to be consistent, of course, with the SDGs, but we need to do more. And local is better, as you probably would already know, for those who monitor our waterways. We need to go into future opportunities, future technology development, like AI, artificial intelligence now. We could look at that now because it's probably a way for poorer countries who do not have the sophisticated equipment to monitor the rivers. So integrated water resources management, as I indicated in the last decade, it has got ramped up so much. And there's a few NARBOs. NARBOs are a network of Asian River Basin organizations. We have LANBOs, which is the Latin America network of basin organizations. We have the INBO, which is the international one. So they've all ramped up when the concept of IWRM, IRBM came about. In fact, the Japanese were the ones who started with this whole process of integrated water resource management. My God, they love this. Every time I go to conferences and I talk to them about the resilient rivers blueprint, they always say, "Oh, are you going to kill the spiral diagram now?" No, your spiral diagram can stay there. It can be spiral, but we need to acknowledge global change in all of these. Is what I'm telling them. So Carla did this slide, and basically it is the principle is that the blueprint is founded on the fact that we have IWRMs, IRBMs everywhere happening now. Most of the countries, most of the river basins have that. We are not advocating to repeat that. We are advocating it to be a plus. We need to add climate adaptation and ecosystem resilience because of the fact that I said before, global change and ecological crisis. Whole of system understanding, some of you would have seen these conceptual diagrams that was done for Southeast Queensland. The recognition that there are multiple solutions to address the multiple pressures. We have to understand SEQ as a whole. That's why Healthy Land and Water, or Healthy Waterways, its predecessor, was quite successful because it actually aimed to look at that, to actually look at a holistic approach and understanding of SEQ's waterways. And we're seeing that now in the reef. When we look at the Great Barrier Reef Report Card, when we look at the river systems and the catchments that flow into the reef, that is the attempt that we're doing now, and I think we're doing a fantastic job. I always say we, the royal we here. So when you look at whole of systems, it also needs to look at whole system models, decision support tools, incorporating climate change scenarios, the recognition of upstream, downstream interdependencies, and the recognition of partnerships. Because it's not just one local government, it might not just be one arm of the state government, it might be not just one community group, it's actually a number of groups that are actually sharing the same vision. I like this diagram when I always say cross-sectoral solutions. And we usually are in silos. We have land separate, water separate, energy separate, not here because I think we're combined, but water quality, for example, are separate. And this is us, the river, saying, okay, I need help, where do I go? when all of these are in, all of the major governance structures are set up in silos. Once again, not unique to us, that's everywhere. Asia is the same. But that's just the nature of how we manage our resources, our natural resources. We need to understand the critical importance of water, energy, food nexus. And I know it's an overused word, but what it is really the recognition that when we manage water and food, we need to take into consideration energy and vice versa. Innovative financial mechanisms, I talked a little bit about this, environmental accounting. The Yangtze River Basin is actually a good case study for this. The Asian Development Bank, of course, invested a lot in the Yangtze. It's a transboundary, as you probably know, the largest river basin in Asia, probably the one which is at very much high risk in terms of water security. They do translocation of water here and there, everywhere. And what they have done is really made it up into the Yangtze River Economic Belt, I think is what they call it now. And they're looking at really innovative finance mechanisms. Because payment for, eco-compensation is already in the law for China. They just did not know how to implement that. So the payment for ecosystem services is a mechanism for them to actually implement the law. So PES is quite a used word in China now. They look at upstream, downstream, and trade-offs. We have a similar project, albeit a smaller one compared to Yangtze, which is the work that the port is doing together with the Lockyer Valley, for example, as offsets. This one is big because the Yangtze is a transboundary river. This is also a diagram I got from Bill Dennison. Really a very good way to look at how we communicate metrics, because tables and graphs are okay, but when you look at a graph of increasing science quality, usually, well, I hope so, most modern scientists would be here, right? But when you look at increasing communication quality, our politicians would be there. That's why they're there, because they're very good communicators. It would be good for them to be here, good communicators, but also good with the science, and that's our vision, right? And it will also be good for the scientists to be here, because then we could communicate the science, right? There are tools and metrics that are very good at doing that now. Report cards, that's why there's such a ramp up of report cards in the last decade, and we find that very easy to understand. A lot of report cards, not just in Australia, originated in Brisbane, though, I will have to say. So it's something we can all be proud for that. It actually originated here in Brisbane with the Southeast Queensland partnership. Engaging, inspiring, transforming communities. And this is something very dear to especially Asia Pacific countries and any other river basin organizations in the world, of course. The communities need to be engaged, especially in countries where the people and the communities actually depend on the rivers for livelihoods. We need to engage them. We need to move them from just informing to empowering. But I always like this one better, where we need to look at trust. This is what the community would like to see. And I know for the reef, with the PPP program for the reef, these have been considered trust, the need to have hope, the sense of worth, and of course the need to feel competent. This is what the community always would like to see. Okay, so what is the blueprint? And as I said, we're going to launch it during the River Symposium. The blueprint is a very short document, and you've seen, I think, the major essence of the document. You will have the principles, the vision, the principles, and a framework. And this is basically just a document that river basin organizations around the world, not just organizations, but people who are actually looking after the rivers, will sign up to and commit to the vision of really aiming for resilient rivers. How do we do that? No, we are not developing another 20-page plan for this. IWRM plans are there, IRBM plans are there. What we would like to showcase is a web-based online platform to share information, ideas, and expertise, which we're referring to at the moment as Resilient Rivers Network. So people sign up for it. Sylvia is here. She's already done the functionality, but we need to actually, refine that and adjust it to how it can be effective. So people can sign up, they can put up case studies. The best way to learn is really by case studies. I've presented some case studies to you today, like Yangtze, for example. Wouldn't it be good if you actually see that case study online and you could see, oh, this is relevant for me. Can I contact this person? That, for me, by far, is the quickest way to actually learn and implement something. I mean, the plan, if you have a plan, that's fine too. But if you read a 20-page plan, how long will that take? Whereas if you go online now, click on a case study, talk to the person, there's a link there for the contact. That's basically the vision of the portal that we're hoping to build. Case studies, blogs, and webinars. So podcasts definitely would do very well. And blueprint signatories will be there. Members forum, and of course, river leaders. A river leader could sign up. We could look at capacity building courses for river leaders. You could share experiences. This year for River Symposium, I think how many do we have? 15 high-level delegates. 15 or 20 high-level delegates. And they're funded by DFAT. And I know some of our colleagues here in the department have actually signed up with Jackie, who's our high-level delegate coordinator, to actually meet them. Because the best learning for them is to have that one-on-one sharing of information. The next thing is about think tanks. So we're not calling it as workshops. These are think tanks. Think tanks will only work if there's a question. So a scenario would be you go up online and say, okay, I don't think any of these case studies can actually fill me up on what I'm thinking about. What is your question? Pose a question. And then IRF can facilitate a think tank for that particular question. Carla just finished one for lakes, especially for the University of Queensland lakes. And I know that's a small waterway relative to what we're talking about, but that's an example of how a think tank can be very, very effective. Think tanks are fast. You could get a group of experts virtually or face-to-face to answer a question, and it might just take a couple or even one meeting, depending on the question. Rather than, I'm going to ask this, and I'm going to ask this, and I'm going to research this, and actually I'm going to fund another project in another. So you think tank it first, and if there's a major gap, then that's the next step. So there are a lot of criteria for how think tanks, of course, would work, and the team will work that out. Twinning, our twinning where we actually share expertise of one, especially our River Prize winners, with other river basin organizations. And of course, as I said before, celebration, recognition of excellence in river basin management. So in a nutshell, a Resilient Rivers Network, how do we do it? Resilient Rivers Network or a hub, think tanks, river twinning, and then celebration, which is the knowledge exchange. I'd like to acknowledge the founding partners of the Resilient Rivers Blueprint. And as I said, this is, we have Deloitte, Healthy Land and Water, ourselves, the University of Maryland, IW Learn, and UNDP as our partners. And basically, we'd like for you to be involved. And maybe more in terms of the review of the principles and framework. They will be released during the River Symposium. Become an implementation partner to pilot the transition from recovery to resilience. So we have, for example, the Yangtze are keen to do this, potentially the Yellow River potentially keen to do this as well. Showcasing the work you're doing in the rivers, become a signatory to the blueprint and the Resilient Rivers Knowledge Hub. And so it's just a quick. So just 3 more slides, if that's okay, just to talk about the IRF. The International RiverFoundation builds river leadership and strong networks. We are based on 3 pillars of leadership. So when we look at, and I've got a slide for each, but leadership means we support and champion future leaders. Hence we have a scholarship program. It's of course funded through philanthropy. We have the International River Prize, where we acknowledge best river management or river practice around the world. Celebrate. We are about to celebrate it this month, end of this month, and we encourage you to come and celebrate it with us by attending the International River Symposium. It will be a fun event. So most, Carla, myself, and Sylvia are quite new. We joined last year, but we loved Sydney. The feel in Sydney was good. It was really a group of people who are very focused and who share the same vision of what we want for our rivers. And of course, we collaborate. We facilitate cross-sectoral collaboration. We especially, sitting in the TEAS building now, because TEAS is actually a foundation member of the IRF. They provide us with a space, and which we're very thankful for. Our dream is to really connect, for example, the corporates, the government, and the community in the way we look after our rivers. And of course, we are international. While we're based in Brisbane, and we're very proud to be based in Brisbane, we are an international organization, and we recognize that. So, International River Symposium will be in China next year. Emerging water professionals, we build river leaders. So we have the emerging water professionals, which is part of our of the International River Symposium. We have the River Leadership Award. We have Kenty's Memorial Award. We also have a fellowship for women. They will all be launched and awarded during the gala dinner for River Symposium. Foster collaboration, river twinning programs. We have river recovery programs like the ones we're doing with Oceanic Gold in the Philippines. And hopefully we're going to start with the corporates and adopt a river program. We are already doing a similar one, which we're calling Twinning with Tweed, where the Tweed Council are actually lending their expertise to a river system in Kenya. So the staff put in a very voluntary contribution, a salary sacrifice, and council matches that. But not only that, when the staff would like to go on holidays and they want to go to Kenya, they go there and lend their expertise, which is really good for the Kenyan River Basin. We share knowledge, as I said. We have knowledge, of course, the Bird and Verities Foundation, who provides us with the money for the International River Prize, the only international river prize with that amount. And we should be very proud of that because it's based here in Queensland. And that's the last slide. Come and join the celebration and symposium on the 20th to the 24th of October. Thank you very much. Thank you for your